In our last panel today, we'll explore how partnerships can drive vibrancy in our downtowns and tackle complex challenges. Please welcome our moderator, McCabe, and our panelists from towns of Fairfield, Cheshire, and Middletown.
All right, so continuing the tradition of unorthodox ways of doing things, and I just want to have a specific shout out to friend and colleague Mark Barnhart, who was like, you know, there's an awful lot of people in this panel, which is true, but this is going to be a bit of a unique setup and not so much panel-y as more case study-ish. And actually, it's so funny when continuing with the constellation themes and the stars align that we're the last panel, actually, because we have heard all day so far about how critically important it is to collaborate and partnership. And Tanisha said it best, which is, it's really hard. And honestly, we're not always great at it, because it's really, really hard. It's easy for us to be, especially when you're looking at a main street. You have so many people who are invested in the success of this geography, but there are also people that are hard at work doing their jobs, running their businesses, being a municipal staff person doing what they do. And it feels like it's an extra thing, but it's actually such a critically important thing. And today's panel, we invited 3 communities who can actually tell you how it works and how they did it. So you can hear from them what their experiences were like in establishing working partnerships with critical stakeholders. So we've invited Fairfield to come and talk about collaboration between 2 local universities and economic development in the downtown. We've invited Middletown to talk about how a collaboration between a downtown management program, the police department, and a social services organization collaborate to create a welcoming, inclusive environment on the downtown for everybody. And we've invited Cheshire to come to talk about a collaboration between the arts, the town, a building, and Mother Nature. So we're going to be doing this in a series of case study discussions with each of them, and then we'll open it up at the end for questions. So I would love to start with Fairfield and introduce Mark Barnhart, our Economic and Community Development Director for the town. I have to admit, I live in Fairfield, so I'm going to probably keep saying hour and hour when I shouldn't, but I can't help myself. Jennifer Anderson was not able to join us today, but instead we have Jackie Bertoloni, Senior Director of Strategic Communications and Community Relations from Fairfield University, and Matt Oestreicher, Director of the Sacred Heart Community Theater. So thank you. Mark, I'd like to start with you, if you could set the stage. Again, I'm biased. We have a fabulous downtown, but it experienced some challenges, and I know that was the spark that started the collaboration with our local universities. So if you could set the stage.
Sure. There it goes. There. Now, turn it on. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you to all of you, Connecticut Main Street, for hosting us today. So we're quite fortunate in Fairfield to have 2 outstanding private universities, but you know, those are your anchor institutions. So if you don't have a university, I'm sure you have other large employers or other groups that constitute an anchor institution that you could call on and build relationships with. In the case of Fairfield, we do have great and very vibrant downtown, but we've had issues or challenges that have come up over the years. One was the closing of the Fairfield. Started to work for the town. It was, again, in a prominent location central to our downtown. Sometimes you have issues where you have community expectations that run and collide with market realities. And, you know, my job is to help, you know, navigate the two. The other instance, we also had a community theater that was run by a community nonprofit for many, many years. two-seat movie theater. Again, very central location or downtown. It closed. It was vacant for a large number of years. In both cases, we work with the universities to help fill those voids. In the case of the Borders Bookstore, we were fortunate again to work with a strong and engaged property owner, and that turnaround happened fairly quickly, again with the work of the university that invested in that location and moved their Fairfield University store to the downtown. In the case of the community theater, it took a bit longer because we didn't have the same level of strong leadership from the property owner. It took some time. It took actually 10 years for us to eventually find a solution to that problem. And again, in that instance, it was again a different university, Sacred Heart University, that stepped in, working with the property owner and the town that provided a tax abatement to help lead the revitalization of that community space.
Thank you, Mark. And to both of you, we'll start with you, Jackie. Why don't you explain what was the appeal? What sparked your interest in investing in a space where actually Fairfield University itself is not located, obviously, in the downtown itself?
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. Well, I wasn't here when the acquisition of the property actually took place, but certainly when Borders closed, there was some concern, and the university, it was not an economic decision, certainly for the university at the time, but it really was done in the spirit of partnership with the town. They saw an opportunity to sort of bring the students and the vibrancy from campus to the downtown corridor, and what exists today, it really has been a success, and we have a store and a Starbucks and a lot of things that we sell to the general public, even though it is, it's a bookstore, and there's a lot of Fairfield gear, but there's a lot of things that invite our general community. And then we also have the Fairfield Forest, which is a community like for the kids to come. We have story time on the weekends, and then we also have the second story, which we have opened up for community meetings, community events, where we sort of share the expertise of the university with the public and engage that way, and welcome certainly our town departments. And Mark is great to work with, and we've had a lot of success there. So it was a tough decision, but a really successful outcome, and certainly every year it's growing and changing, and there's a lot more opportunity to come.
Thank you. And same question to you, Matt.
So so I run the 500-seat Shoe Community Theater. That's Sacred Heart University, the other university in town. And Sacred Heart was interested in not only, they've grown rapidly in recent years, but also having a front door to the community that would be sort of a showcase of university talent, but also a way to serve the community with arts and with other community kind of events. So we do now about 200 events per year, and we have all kinds of series of, rock music and classical jazz. So we extend the university mission and try to support underfunded arts and go into each pocket of our community and try to find what they are, how we can serve them, and also showcase university talent like the orchestra and the dance team. And we just two quick things on that is that we work a lot on this level of how can we bring sort of a global awareness and like our living in a global village to our small town or growing town. So at first, the university asked me if I can partner with all of these internationally recognized brands like IFC, 92nd Street Y, Apollo Theater, and turns out none of them would do that, and they're protective over their brands. So we asked, how can we create similar kinds of things by leveraging our local talent? And I think one thing is many Connecticut towns, we have a lot of artists, writers quietly living there, but not engaged in the town. So we asked, how can we engage them, make them feel valued in our community, and also use that as a vehicle for events that attract people and as a mentorship opportunity. So just very quick example, and I'll pass it, is we had a movie premiere called The Long Game where someone locally was a producer of that film. Mark in the town let us close down streets. One of the local car dealerships let us bring cars that were era appropriate, put them all around Main Street from the 50s, and then we were able to premiere the movie, have the stars of the movie, get national press, and make Main Street feel like a real gathering place for people. So that's a lot of how our partnerships work.
That's great. Thank you. And Mark, what have you seen in terms of the ripple effect for the entire corridor? And are there ways that all of the other sort of stakeholders and players get pulled into some of this action that's happening due to the two universities being anchors?
Well, I think the theme of today's conference is relationship building and collaboration, and that's certainly evident here. We have a tourism group that meets regularly. Both universities are represented on that group. We also have a Main Street Downtown Merchant Association that I formed that, again, both universities are represented since they're in the downtown. And we talk regularly about these issues that come up. So it's a lot, even when I prefaced the stage with the problems that we're trying to solve, it's about obviously having the trust and the relationships that you've developed over time through regular meetings and communications, so that when a situation does arise, you can call upon the folks within your social network, your professional network, to help problem solve. And that's been the case here with both of these. And from the standpoint in terms of the ripple effect, clearly we're very proud of our arts and cultural. We're the latest cultural district to be established in the state of Connecticut, was just recognized. Matt sits on our Arts Commission and is the chair of our Arts Cultural District Advisory Board. But having a vibrant downtown, a key to that is the arts and culture. Having both universities actively there. A lot of times folks remark, well, it's a university town, but it doesn't always feel that way. So we want the university to be represented downtown, but that helps support all of our local businesses, our restaurants. They will tell you, the restaurants will tell you when there is an event or a happening, musical concert at either Fairfield Theater Company or Shoe Community Theater, because they see an increased amount of foot traffic and business. So it definitely supports our downtown through these great partnerships that we have.
Thank you. And it's just also really interesting to hear about the number of opportunities you've created for people to share information, the good and the bad, to be able to see the positive impact of things that you're trying, and then to pivot when things are, not going as well as you would want. So I can't believe we're already have to shift gears now to go to Middletown. Hello, everyone. So I'm especially excited to showcase their collaboration, because this is actually an issue that we hear a lot about from our Connecticut Main Street members, which is how do we create a welcoming, inclusive, comfortable environment and address some of the challenges with panhandling and other activities. And so Middletown has launched a great partnership that they will talk about today, starting with Sandra Driska Russo, who is the executive director of the Middletown Downtown Business District, along with Chief Erik Costa from the Middletown Police Department, and Maryellen Shuckerow, the executive director of St. Vincent de Paul. So Sandra, I am going to start with you, if you would set the stage for what the situation was like in the downtown in your role.
Hi, everybody. So about 5 years ago, smack in the middle of COVID, they were looking for a new downtown director. They knew me, former city clerk. Everyone kind of knew me. I was looking for something part-time. They approached me. I said, sure. Smack in the middle of COVID, and restaurants were hurting very badly. So I stepped into the role, and one of the very first things I was hearing about was a subject that can be uncomfortable to talk about, and that is street population, the homeless, the addicted. They're on our streets, and they're causing a problem. What do we do? And at that time, the city had allowed dining, outdoor dining, to expand, and they got very creative, and so there was a lot more people dining outdoors, and so this problem really rose up. And we had a meeting together at City Hall, and about this issue, and I attended, and two things struck me was we had an interim police chief, not this wonderful man, at the time, and the interim chief was fine, but he was interim, and so not in a permanent role, and not in the room was the director of St. Vincent de Paul, who was literally the premier social service agency of the city. And so after that meeting, I sort of talked to my commissioners, and I said, listen, we've got to figure this out. It's always been top down. Cut off the head of the snake, snake grows back. Decades. How do we do this better? So I reached out to Maryellen first and said, we need to talk because this is your population and you are the one person I know can help us and figure out how are we going to do this better? Do it in a very compassionate way. We want to all be kind and we want to be considerate of what the needs of these people are, but it also can impact and affect our businesses the way it is. So we had a great meeting, and she came up with a phenomenal idea.
Take it from there, Maryellen. Tell us. We're on the edge of our seats. What was it?
Thank you. It's really not rocket science. So while I am a social service leader, I grew up in a family business and worked in my family's business. And I see an old friend of mine, Patrick McMahon, in the crowd. We grew up together in Windsor, Connecticut. So, we work soup kitchen, one of the largest client choice food pantries in Connecticut, not on Main Street. The soup kitchen's on Main Street. We also are a fairly large supportive housing provider with about 130 units under management. So we're part of the Catholic Church, Diocese of Norwich. Our bishop in 1980 was tasked by two Sisters of Mercy that left Mercy High School and was responding to the closing of state mental health hospitals. And all of a sudden, Middletown had a homeless issue. And so our soup kitchen was started with a shelter at one point in our history. And the bishop chose to buy a building on Upper Main Street, which we call the North End, and put it on Main Street. And it's always, I think, been a contention that we were on Main Street. And so I worked there 25 years ago when I was a Sister of Mercy, and I've returned at the sunset of my career 6 years ago, 6 months before the pandemic. So I was reading Sandra's minutes to a meeting one day in my office, and I'm like, oh, they're having a problem with panhandling and people taking rolls off the tables for outdoor dining and a homeless population. So we got together. I said, how can I help you? So I come from a servant leadership position that no matter what someone's state in life is, and I work with probably one of the most vulnerable populations of any community. But I also believe in a business perspective that I'm a business, right? I'm a social service, but I'm a business. And we can't be detracting as a social service agency from the vibrancy of our business community, and it has to be a partnership. And so we met with the chief early on. We looked at, how can we work together to solve solutions? So what I suggested that we needed was a street outreach manager, someone who would work peak business hours, Thursday to Sunday, on the streets with our population who are panhandling, who are, many of you probably had some defecation issues during pandemic when people couldn't go into Dunkin' Donuts and use the bathroom, right? Look at those quality of life issues that the population we serve at St. Vincent's were causing amongst the community. So we started a pilot with a street outreach manager first. Downtown businesses paid for that. We got that going, hired a very talented man who's very recovery orientated. And he's on the street from 1 to 7, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, walking the street. All the businesses on Main Street have his cell phone. He has a direct dial into the police and mobile crisis. And so we did that. The second thing we did is I believe our people need a purpose. And many of our people can't work because of their issues. But hanging around, I was raised that hanging around is a sin, right? And when you look at the homeless and you look at people with addictions, and we also have a high level of people with untreated mental illness, they have nothing to do. And so they tend to go towards behaviors that disrupt the business community. So we started a clean crew. And what the clean crew did was kind of augment the street outreach manager. We do twice a week in the summer. They actually, the crew goes with one of my staff. Right now it's our street outreach manager. And they literally clean Main Street, the gutters, the business fronts, so it's prepared and it's clean, and it's a service they do to the community. And that has brought them to become known to our business community by name. Thank you for the job you're doing. And it creates more of a relationship between the businesses and our clients. And so they're seen somewhat of an asset versus detractor. So we've done this now. I think we're in our third or fourth year. Chief Costa will talk about his community policing model, but now the city pays for the street outreach manager fully because it reduced police calls, it reduced damages to properties and everything else. So now it's part of the city budget, and literally it's $30,000 a year for that program. $30,000, and it's effective. So for me as a nonprofit leader, you have to be creative, and you got to pilot something right away. When you have an issue, you got to come together with your leaders in your community and figure out something to pilot and try, and then pivot and tweak it as you need. And so all our businesses on Main Street know we have this program, and they will call, his name is James First, and he is right there. If he's on duty, he mitigates the issue right away, oftentimes bypasses needing to call police. If he needs mobile crisis or the social workers from the police, boom, that's a direct dial. They come on scene, and it just mitigates the issue right away. And the businesses know they have someone they can call immediately who's going to be on the street that can deal with those issues of panhandling, some drug activity, or quite frankly, some very severe mental health issues that are among the homeless population. So it doesn't take a lot of money. It takes fortitude, creativity, and get something going and try it, and then stick together. If it isn't working, figure out how to pivot.
Great, thank you. And I'd love to hear from you, Chief.
All right, so I'll roll this over to him now. So I started with her, and then he got appointed. So he started attending we have monthly meetings for the Downtown Business District, and Chief came, and first thing he was hearing about were some of these issues, but also, Chief, where's the walking patrol? We don't see anybody on Main Street. What's going on? Can you help us out? We have all these problems. And the chief stepped in, and man, has he just taken it to another level.
Hello, I'm Eric Costa. Honestly, it comes down, when it comes to the police department, a lot of these things is what it comes down to is what you thought in your mind when you saw me walk up here. The number one focus of the Middletown Police Department is customer service. With customer service, trust is built. And when it came down to the issues that were told to me that was happening on our Main Street, it was about listening to the experts, because they're truly the experts. Our ability to adjust to the community and listen to the needs, we adjusted how we police our community. And thankfully, we also have to mention now former Mayor Ben Florsheim for giving me the opportunity to do some hiring and readjusting our agency's organization, bringing in caseworkers and partnering with DEMIS and their CIT licensed clinicians to support our officers on the initial response of crisis. A lot of the things that they just explained. We listened to some of the causes and issues. We cleaned up a panhandling ordinance where it didn't leave any gray area. It was very clear and succinct about some of the issues we were seeing with the outdoor dining issues of the grabbing over the rail of food, making people feel uncomfortable while sitting outside. The way we solved that wasn't by putting people into our jail cells. It was by communicating that better to the homeless community and those that are in crisis or are suffering from addiction. Once we built those pathways and identifying individuals in the community that were consistently dealing with our officers, we actually found it better to provide them resources at the initial response, which has limited the calls of service, and it built a relationship between our officers and some of the homeless communities, knowing actually the ripple effect of maybe their families, their counselors that they're dealing with through the stakeholders in our city, and also those personal relationships have also allowed us to be better de-escalation techniques when they're in crisis. Obviously, sometimes not taking medicine or they're under the influence. So that has helped as well. This only worked, though, if we continuously communicate together as a group on a monthly basis, weekly basis. They have my cell phone 24/7, and that's how I run my department. With that being said, we did have some problems with the clunkiness of the beginning of the program. So I decided to take an officer off my patrol division and what I called a stakeholder or a ownership patrol individual who takes care of our downtown specifically. His job is to make sure he has contact with the Downtown Business District Chamber and as well as the St. Vincent's Home Director, and to ensure that he's responsive to their needs. And then he's required to meet every business owner at least once a week, if not daily, to address any concerns that they see. This communication is a new way of policing in Connecticut. I know a lot of chiefs around the state of taking on this model. Our officers need to be out of their cruisers. That's our goal in Middletown. And if you don't know Middletown all that well, which I know many of you do, it's a very large community. It's 43 square miles, some of it being rural, some of it being suburbish, and then obviously the urban section of the downtown. So to get our cops outside of the car, it's also built their knowledge in dealing with the community that is in crisis by working with great individuals like this and being educated by them, and it makes them better as officers. So I don't know if I answered that the best I could. But.
That was excellent. Thank you so much. And now turning to Cheshire. So I'm so pleased to introduce Andrew Martelli, Assistant Town Manager, and Ilona Somogyi, who is the President and co-founder of Ball and Socket Arts. You represent a really exciting collaboration that really started with a building. So Ilona, if you don't mind kicking us off with your story.
Sure, thank you. I feel really sheepish after Middletown. Holy cow, that's a story. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done. Yes, so I'm a Cheshire girl. I did grow up in that town, and I'm one of those option number one returners. I lived in New York City, started my career, and I came back to Connecticut because I just like life better here. But in my career in the arts, as an arts professional, I experienced a lot of converted industrial centers where they were presenting arts, turned into museums, galleries, performing arts centers. Most notably, Mass MoCA up in North Adams, Massachusetts. And we actually had an abandoned factory sitting right on one of our main streets on West Main Street in Cheshire. And it's been there, you know, for hundreds, since 1850 is when that factory was founded. It underwent quite a few changes, but still stands today, but went out of operations in the early 1990s with the loss of the industry in the garment trade, mostly manufactured buttons, just like much of Waterbury and a lot of the things in the hallway here. And, you know, I was with some of my friends, and we grew up in town. We were all creative people, and we were like, you know, Cheshire doesn't really support the arts, but look at this. Doesn't this look like it could be a really amazing art center? You know, like peering through the chain link fence. And then we just, you know, we took a tour with the realtor because it went up for sale, and then we took a tour tour, and then we're like, yeah, you know what? This building is speaking to us. Let's give this a go. And then we founded a nonprofit specifically for the task of converting this factory into an art center. So Ball and Socket Manufacturing is the name of the company, and I wish you could see the slide because it's a really cool looking set of buildings, but you can find it on your phone if you Google it. And so we turned ourselves into Ball and Socket Arts because the place already had a name, and it was actually right on the wall, like right on the front edifice of the building. So we started Ball and Socket Arts. This was in 2012. We got very lucky and lucky/unlucky that we won a sizable award from the DECD, from the Brownfield office. They were offering awards for brownfield conversion projects because, surprise, it's an old factory, so it's a brownfield site. So surprise, not a lot of developers were interested in it, even though its location was like prime and had an amazing sort of set of buildings that people really wanted to visit. We got this award, and so we were kind of like, uh-oh, I guess we are actually doing this. It sort of went from pie in the sky, idealistic, 3 people who had no experience in this whatsoever, to let's see how we can make this happen. So it has been a few years. This was 2012, we got the award. We managed to secure the property and purchase it in 2014. It was in private hands, and we are currently the property owners as well. And since then, it's been a really fascinating process of building collaborations, building the team that's making this happen, developing partnerships to create a project that has a life of its own and wants to complete itself. So we are presently at phase 1 completion, which was 2 outbuildings, 2 smaller buildings. We were able to bring in 2 tenants, really, really key anchor tenants that sort of feed into the creative economy as well, position our organization as a home base. We were able to go professional in the interim and have hired staff, which we talked about in the first segment. Huge boost in our ability to get things done. And then developing a very valuable partnership with the town, which was actually one of the hardest entities to get working with us. There is a lot of until Andrew came along, but there was we did talk a lot about sort of Yankee pride and the sense of suspicion or fear, or the weirdo artists, or these people are from elsewhere, or all this like fantastical ideas that people who were running the town had about what we wanted to do. But at the same time, them knowing that no one else is going to convert this polluted site right on West Main Street. So let's support them, let's boost them, let's help them make it happen. So the partnership with the town has developed along the way, but it has been a slow build. And there's Tanisha was talking about how hard collaboration is, and it has been hard. But I think when you get key players on board, everybody buoys each other up and makes things possible that seem impossible.
Andrew, I'd love for you to take it from here and talk about from the perspective of the city in terms of the opportunities and challenges of making this happen.
Am I on? Okay. So kind of piggybacking off of what Ilona said. So Cheshire, for those of you that aren't familiar with the community, we are a former rural farm town turned suburban bedroom community. So with that, our Fairfield or Middletown Main Street was non-existent. And so the best that we had was essentially an industrial area around an old button factory that was anchored in 10 years previously with the expansion of the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. So we have a linear trail that runs through the center of town. The crossing at West Main Street is one of the busiest crossings in the state of Connecticut. If you've ever driven down Route 70, you've probably sat at our Hawk system, which the residents love and hate collectively. But coming into the role as the coordinator of economic development 4 years ago for the town, I came from the city of Waterbury, whereas I worked for the Waterbury Development Corporation, where we had brownfields littered all over the city. And what we didn't have there at that time were key partnerships. And here you had in Cheshire a bunch of artsy weirdos who had put their personal lives on the line and their business address, home addresses, to purchase this vacant factory in the center of our town. So I respected that, and I knew how difficult of a task that is to do from my work in a former Middletown here in Waterbury. And, you know, I worked really hard having good partners in order to kind of change the culture in the town to say, hey guys, this is a liability if it's sitting here vacant, and it's a liability regardless, so let's help these guys. And so what we've done over the past 4 or 5 years is we've worked with DECD. We went after a bar planning grant to help to rewrite the zoning regulations around this factory to adopt a form-based code, which was complete out of the box thinking for a small suburban community. We've gone after steep grants. We've done streetscape enhancements. We've also partnered with Ball and Socket. One of their large projects was to build a parking area, and so we signed a multi-year agreement with them, and we built a municipal parking lot on the property, which dealt with some brownfield issues, but then also gave us key parking for our Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, so it became kind of a community asset on the property. And then as recently as last year, we moved our arts school, which was in a converted beer VFW hall next to our dog park and public works garage, into this really cool factory, signed a multi-year lease with them, which not only gives them some working capital, but also helps for some artistic juices to flow in this great old building. Ilona restored all the windows by hand. So we're building a downtown. So I guess what I'd like to say to those of you who are from kind of the suburban, it's hard to change some of the culture and thought process, but it is doable as long as you just keep fighting it and you have good partners. And also we joined Main Street, which was kind of an out-of-box thing. I convinced our Economic Development Commission to join the Main Street Association here. And we're making West Main Street become our Main Street, because Route 10 certainly does not have the walkability that West Main Street does have. So
Thank you. Two things I do want to point out. First is we were really excited to partner with Cheshire, because that was out of the box thinking actually for Connecticut Main Street too, traditionally, that we expand what we do to include aspiring downtowns that are being built really from the ground up. I also would love to hear a little bit more about the resiliency and the stability that comes with owning a property as a nonprofit, as a group of artists.
Yeah, it's very advantageous, we've heard, and very few people expect us to be the owner of the property when they start talking to us. A lot of arts organizations are they need to find a place to live. They need to make deals. They to get favorable rents or leases, and we just, like, we sort of tumbled kind of ass backwards into this position of actually being the property owner. Like, that's how we started, was that we were able to get this grant and loan package from the DECD. So the first thing we did was purchase it. And, for us, for what we're doing, it was like securing its future, really, because we wanted to steward it. We wanted to protect it. We wanted to bring it back to life. We wanted to restore it. That was all. And we wanted to open it back up to the public, and make it a vital community and economic gathering place for Cheshire, which it had been as a factory. And then it, as an abandoned, crumbling site, it was not helping anybody. It's certainly not helping neighbors, property values, et cetera, et cetera. But, the other part of being a property owner, which I, have sort of been realizing as we've been talking today, is that the tenants that we've brought in, so we are actually landlords now, and I'm Andrew's landlord with the art school, is that our tenants are also our partners. Like, we actually are partnering with Sweet Claude's Ice Cream, which was our first tenant. They help us with fundraising. We talk about what activities are going to happen to make sure that people who are coming to our events are also going there for ice cream, and and vice versa. And very much so with Arts Place, which is such a natural fit as a tenant, because they are educating people in the arts. There's a built-in audience that comes there that also serves us. We're collaborating with the artists that we bring into our galleries. They are doing workshops at Arts Place. So there's so many ways that we can cross-pollinate. So in thinking about, developing our site further for additional tenants. You know, we have a lot of people who are interested in coming there. Like, we have more tenants than we need because it's a really cool place. And I think the business community has that idea that, you know, it's about location. You want to be there. We are going to keep building out our tenants based on how they contribute to this creative ecosystem, and continue these partnerships on that level as well.
Thank you. That's great. So, a lot of information for our audience to absorb. I'm wondering if anyone might have any questions to ask our panelists. I'm shocked. Not a one.
Lunch is coming.
Do our panelists have questions that they can think of to ask of each other? My goodness. We have a question. Savannah Nicole.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for sharing these stories. I think that that's the fun part of this, is when you get ideas about what you can bring back to the places we work and we live and we play. My question for you all is, you've talked about the ways in which you've collaborated with one another, but can you talk about if you received any public or community apprehension, or was the community on favor of these partnerships? The public-private partnerships are really important to getting this stuff done, but sometimes that's hard to communicate to the broader community, the value of that. So if anyone can speak to that, that'd be really appreciated.
Like to start?
I can just address the one from the Shoe Community Theater. What became the Shoe Community Theater was, as I said, vacant for 10 years, and we were not working with an ownership group that was supportive or engaged within the community, and we were trying to figure out a way in which we could get the ownership to sell to somebody that would be more engaged. And so the public was very much involved in that, not me directly, because I needed to maintain a positive working relationship with the owner of the property, but there were certainly efforts to, I would say, publicly shame the individual in a way that moved it in a direction that we needed it to go. So there is an opportunity to work with the community in a broader sense to achieve the outcome that you're looking for.
The cherry trees, I think, are relevant as well.
Well, that's on the negative side.
Well, I think that's what she was looking for, the pros and cons there.
Well, we also had some we had cherry trees in front of the community theater, which were not in good shape and needed to be removed, and they've been replanted. But at that time, there were a lot of folks that were very upset with the town and with the first select woman at the time, who made the decision to remove the cherry trees. We'd had litigation, but in the end, it's a beautiful public plaza. So there's the pro. Thank you for reminding me, Matt. I was trying to get rid of that memory from.
Well, I was thinking of it as a comeback story where all that goodwill was regained with what we've now brought to the community. But it was a challenge during that time.
No, that's so true. And actually, it's funny because it's one of those things where then when the new thing comes and it's really lovely, all of a sudden nobody even remembers that there were the cherry tree wars in Fairfield, Connecticut. And it seems like that's a similar case. And then I will turn it over to Middletown with Cheshire, because you had mentioned that here you have this crumbling building, and yet.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much public discourse around this site and what should happen, and I think everything has to be taken with a grain of salt, but anytime you have an environmentally contaminated property, you're going to have a lot of imagination in people's minds about what the dangers are. It's sort of like no amount of communication is going to convince people that their ideas are wrong. But I think what happened with us was, like, there were a lot of people rooting for us. And so the people who were rooting for us just kind of became more important than the people who were sort of naysayers or trying to spread sort of fear around the project.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that I think there was a lot of uncertainty about what a brownfield site was and what a hazardous building material was. So there was a learning curve there, because good or bad, this was our only brownfield site in town. So this wasn't a building official, fire marshal, health department, et cetera, who was used to dealing with these types of properties. And so getting through that learning curve, understanding that, hey, there's a path forward through this. There's this thing called a licensed environmental professional who could come out and do a hazardous building material inventory. There are all of these things that were able to be done in order to help move the project forward, and kind of, there were definitely more cheerleaders than distractors, I think, which helped.
And Middletown, how about with you all?
Oh, I'm going to start with, I think that's a great question. In my field and public outreach, felt that we're going out of our lane in regards as a police department in the social service realm. But I think we had a lot of people supporting us. When I went into the discussion, a lot of the retailers were really upset about how it was hurting business. And I think that it comes back to communication, and I was extremely transparent with the business community and the chambers and those that had concerns about how we're going to police that community. And then made them part of the policing as well. So I think the communication was very important. And the other piece is the police officers themselves is understanding that they understood that we needed to bring in stakeholders into the police department to guide us, because a lot of these things is not what we do on a daily basis. So they became more and more open to it, because it supported them in their role and made them less frustrated in some of those conflictual areas. Just so you know, in the first year of this project, our use of force went down 30% in the first year, and we're down even further now. But it's important, communication, and build a relationship with the police department. I obviously am biased because no one wearing a uniform in the room, but the police departments do a lot for strength and economic development. You make them part of the conversation. They're not going to tell you how to sell a candy bar, but they're going to be able to say, this is how we can best police you so you're successful. And I think that's important. And those are the conversations we have.
I have a question for Middletown. This is working. Did you enter into an agreement with the Public Works Union to allow the people to do that Public Works sort of work?
God, I
on
love
Main
that
Street?
question. I love that question so much. The answer is no. And here's the thing. We actually clean our own sidewalks. The DBD pays for that twice a year because our Public Works Department just can't seem to get it done. So what happened was, again, I was the city clerk for a long time, had a lot of friends at City Hall, reached out to the Public Works Director and said, hey, can you please weed the beds? Can you please clean the sidewalks? Can you please clean the trash cans? And he said, sorry, don't have the staff to do that. And I said, oh, do you mind if we do it? And he said, nope, go for it. And I said, are the unions going to come after us? Because part of union in my past life. And he said, let me worry about it. And the truth is, never happened. Just we did our thing. The guys at Public Works didn't care. You know, again, the partnership. It's City Hall, and I think the staff of these departments appreciating that we're just trying to better our city, trying to better our downtown. We actually took some things off their plate at times. We have a fabulous Public Works department, but right now there's no director, there's no deputy director, and they're down, I think, 12 staff people. You cannot function at the size of a city like ours without these partnerships where we're willing to say, hey, we're going to clean the sidewalks and we're going to take care of cleaning the garbage cans because we have this great cleanup crew at St. Vincent's now. And I actually had the garden club was willing to come down and weed. And they were very receptive to it because you have to work together when you can't accomplish these things. So fortunately, we did not have that issue, but believe me, I understand that it can be an issue with unions.
Thank you. And that concludes our panel. And I want to, everyone, please give a round of applause for our amazing panelists. Thank you so much.